Okay, Doug. I'd like to welcome you all to Perpetual Life. It's a wonderful thing to have you here this evening. I'd like to welcome also everyone who's online and who's watching downstairs, where we are also live streaming this event. My name is Neil Vandry, and I'll be your officiator tonight. It's going to be a great night. You know, you just heard Elaine Silver. She's our resident musician, and I want to thank her for, she sings here often, and I want to thank her for doing the songs that she does. She has a signature Forever Young version that she gives us. And also want to thank the AV team back there, Doug and Amy and Warren. Thanks for being here tonight. We are live streaming this event, and we are now live all over the world. We have a library in the back of the sanctuary here, in the outer sanctuary. If you'd like to check out a book, read it over the next month and bring it back. We have events here once a month. Our next meeting here is February the 23rd. Jose Carrera is going to be here. He's flying up from Venezuela. We also have in March Charlie Cam coming down from Chicago. So we're looking forward to having them here in the very short future. As you leave the sanctuary, to the left is the cryonics table. If you're curious about cryonics, as you leave this evening, you might want to check that table out and see what we have there for you. I'm interested in knowing how you heard about the event tonight. How many here are here for the very first time to Perpetual Life? Wow, about over a dozen of you. Great. How did you hear about this? I'm just curious. How many people saw the newspaper ad in the Sun Sentinel in the newspaper? 3, 4, 5 of you? Very good. How many people received an email to remind you about the event? 1, 2, 3, 4, many of you there. And how many people saw it in Facebook or on the meetups? Meetup, very good. Maybe you got a phone call to remind you. Did you get a phone call or a text, a phone text? Excellent. Super. We're glad to have social chats. The queen of social media is on the front row here. Thanks for being here tonight, Tanya. Tonight we do have Denny Tsang has a biomat feature tonight. He's going to allow you to try out his biomats downstairs. Here at Perpetual Life, we don't endorse or give any preference to any particular service or product or political party. So we're not giving you an endorsement of his product, but he's here to let you try it out if you'd like to after the event on the stage downstairs, and that's Denny. Now, some of you who came last couple of weeks ago for Bedford Day, we celebrate James Bedford Day every year. That comes January 12th, which marks the first time that a human being was preserved, was put into cryopreservation. That's James Bedford. Dr. James Bedford, it was the 50th anniversary of his preservation, and when this occurred, we went to the city of Hollywood and talked to the mayor and asked for a proclamation, and we were pleased that we got a proclamation from the mayor of Hollywood commemorating Bedford Day. I'd like to take a moment to share the proclamation with you, and Doug's going to put something up on the screen in a moment. And Mayor Levy, Josh Levy, couldn't be here tonight. We were hoping he was going to be able to be here tonight to read this himself. He gives his regrets, but he has given us this I'd like to share with you. In recognition of Dr. James Bedford Day, January 12th, 2017, whereas people of many faiths, nationalities, and creeds value human life, health, and longevity, and whereas the members of the Church of Perpetual Life and longevity enthusiasts around the world view cryonic suspension as a method of extended emergency medicine. And whereas the first cryosuspension occurred on January 12th, 1967 of Dr. James Bedford, and this past January 12th, marks the 50th anniversary of this historic event. And whereas in honor of his courage and forward thinking, the Church of Perpetual Life honors Dr. Bedford and the thousands of other patients and future patients of cryonics as they embark on a journey in the quest of cures to extend lifespans. Now, therefore, Josh Levy, Mayor of the City of Hollywood, Florida, and the Hollywood City Commission hereby proclaim January 12th, 2017 as Dr. James Bedford Day. And I believe this is the first time that a cryonics proclamation was made and that there was a recognition of cryonics. So we're very proud to have Mayor Josh Levy and the entire commission bestow this upon us. That's fine. There he is. He's the good-looking guy on the right. Back in 1980, very few scientists believed that anything could be done to prevent the degenerative effects inflicted by aging. And to counter this misconception, our speaker this evening pointed to scientific studies showing that it was possible to prevent some age-related diseases and to slow the aging process itself, at least in animals. And he argued that if enough funds were committed to research, therapies to slow and reverse human aging could be developed that would result in the greatest revolution in medical history. Few people in 1980 thought that intervention into biological aging was possible, and many questioned if we should interfere with what appeared to be the natural process. But he argued that aging was the greatest scourge afflicting humanity, and that if people had the opportunity to live longer, many of society's problems could disappear. Mr. Faloon based his philosophical arguments on theories that people with limited lifespans are not particularly motivated to protect society's long-term interests, since they themselves would only have a relatively short time to live. Longer lifespans would result in people behaving in a manner that would make this world a better place, since they themselves would exist in the environment which they would create. His topic tonight is human age reversal. So let's give a warm welcome to the founder of this church, my very good friend, Mr. Bill Faloon. Okay, Bill.
I want everyone to know the significance of that proclamation, because you may not understand it has legal benefits that can protect the technology we're seeking to evolve in a meaningful way. There's a group in New Zealand who's been aggressively seeking to enhance the ability to slow and reverse aging in people, and also introduce the concept of cryopreservation. Government of New Zealand thought that that was not even a legitimate charitable activity, and they revoked the charitable status of this organization. And there was a 5-year battle in New Zealand fighting the charities commissioners about whether or not the prospect of attempting to slow or reverse human aging was even worthwhile pursuing. And a ruling by the High Court in New Zealand came down just a couple months ago, and we won. We won the battle. They said the charities commissioners were 95% wrong, and they ruled 100% in our favor. Had we had that proclamation back in 2011, they would have emulated the city of Hollywood and said, well, if Hollywood says it's okay, then we'll say it's okay. That's the way governments work, by the way. They look at past precedent and base their decision on what others decided to do. So that has a lot of meaning, that proclamation by the mayor of Hollywood in future legal battles, because unfortunately we still are an oppressed minority. Most people don't yet believe that taking meaningful steps to slow or reverse biological aging is a worthwhile pursuit. Some feel it's a waste of resources. We all think differently here, I understand. But that proclamation, as I said, will have enormous value in future legal battles, as will the High Court decision in New Zealand. That will be used in future legal battles when government entities try to take away our right to live longer, our right to pursue research that will enable human beings to eventually achieve indefinitely extended human lifespans. Now, Benjamin Franklin, he is somebody who, if you don't know a lot about him, I suggest when you have a chance, just Google his name and read as much as you want. He was an incredibly successful individual across a broad spectrum of activity. Benjamin Franklin believed that at some point, all diseases afflicting mankind, including aging, would be cured. And if you look at all the accomplishments that Ben Franklin did, he's not someone who would just say something without there being some substance behind it. So I'm going to open up this presentation tonight with the fact that human age reversal, it is becoming more probable. Almost by the day, scientific advances are enabling the possibility of human beings to grow biologically younger become that much more real. But what I'm going to start with is the back of my car. This is what I look at every day when I go to my car. And what you should look at is under the name, that's a Toyota, by the way, and it's a Toyota Avalon, you see Ed Morse. Now, Ed Morse is a successful car dealer. He has dealerships throughout Florida. Ed Morse Cadillac, Ed Morse Honda, Ed Morse Toyota. You'll see his advertisements on TV relentlessly, on the local news, on sports broadcasts. The slogan is, Ed Morse is going to save you, meaning he's going to save you money. And I must say, I got a very good deal on my Toyota that I bought from the Ed Morse dealership. But shortly after I bought the car, well, Ed Morse died. He died at the age of 66 with a net worth that we were only able to ascertain back to 2004 of $1.6 billion. Good chance he's worth double that now. But Ed's no longer around. Ed died. Don't know exactly what caused him to die. That wasn't publicized. But 66 is a very young age to die when you've got this kind of money. And I think Ed Morse, like so many other successful people, was a charitable individual. He probably made conventional donations to organizations seeking to perhaps cure certain diseases. But the bottom line is, I'm not aware of anything he did to fund research aimed at slowing or reversing biological aging in humans. So the Ed Morse name will probably live on indefinitely. His name will go on. His descendants will enjoy lots and lots of money, but Ed's not around. And we need to change this way of thinking amongst ultra-wealthy individuals. They are the people who have the ability to use just a tiny fraction of their net worth to fund research that could result in meaningful, healthy extensions of our lifespans. And they're the ones that would benefit. They're the ones that would be the first to benefit. And yet, Ed Morse missed the longevity boat. And another individual worth a lot of money. This individual owns 7,000 apartment buildings in San Diego. And he contracted cancer around the age of 81. He battled it until it killed him at age 82. He was a little bit more forthcoming about his illness. And he was able to state categorically that he was making more money than he had ever made before. But it didn't matter. He was dying of cancer. And as you know, cancer involves toxic therapies that are very, very unpleasant to have to go through. He's worth over $1 billion. He did, near the end, put a bunch of money into cancer research. It's kind of too late. I mean, when you're healthy, this is the time for the ultra-wealthy people to start putting money into research. And I've shown a number of different photos of wealthy people in past services here, people who have a lot of money and failed to put it where it would benefit them and the rest of humanity. We go back a relatively short period of time to when the Wright brothers first took off in an airplane. Now, everyone thought that that was impossible. For 10,000 human years, no one thought man could ever fly. But they did it. They did it. And once they did it, all kind of technology advanced to make it a lot better. But if you look at what the experts said, even after the Wright brothers proved that heavier than air flight was possible, the experts thought that it had little value or no value. People who had credentials thought it wasn't going to have any practical applicability. And yet, as we know now, international air travel has gone from that flying glider to intercontinental jet flights, and that only took 54 years. 54 years from the time it was proven to be able to fly, they developed a commercial jetliner. And it wasn't easy. Lots and lots of innovations and engineering workarounds had to be put together to develop the jet engine itself and all of the moving parts that enable you to fly anywhere in the world in relative safety. And again, people never thought this was possible. But once the first evidence was made in 1903 at Kitty Hawk, well, wow, all of a sudden everyone jumped on board. The same thing's going to happen with age reversal. We were able to demonstrate, we being the scientific community in 1972, that age reversal was possible in the animal model. And by 2014, a culmination of research findings made it clear that aging doesn't just go in one direction. We can reverse it using existing technologies. So human age reversal is not a matter of if, it truly is a matter of how soon can it happen. Will we be alive long enough to make that happen? And that's why we're going to push very hard for high net worth individuals who have expressed an interest in wanting to fund research to start putting money into it to accelerate this technology. Now, people in 1900 died of bacterial infections, leading cause of death. And that all turned around with the advent of antibiotics. So by 2007, almost nobody dies of bacterial infections. They die of other problems. These problems, heart disease, cancer, stroke, they're primarily related to aging. If we reverse aging, these diseases are going to shrink in prevalence the same way tuberculosis, pneumonia, diphtheria, all of these horrible bacterial infections that were killing people, it's going to go away. We have to eradicate biological aging the same way they were able to eradicate most of the bacterial infections that killed people a little over 100 years ago. So the urgent need to fund aging research has prompted some of the most forward-thinking individuals in the United States. Jeff Bezos of Amazon has partnered with the Mayo Clinic to do human studies with the objective of reversing aging. They want to remove senescent cells from aging people, which will enable our organs and everything else to function much more efficiently. So big money is being put in by some of the wealthier people right now, which is spectacular news for everyone in this room and everyone hearing the service. Wealthy people are putting in money. We need more of them to do it. We need more of them to do it. Peter Thiel, he has donated $7 million to Aubrey de Grey's SENS Foundation. He's also set up a bunch of biomedical companies to conduct human age reversal research. And here again is a forward-thinking individual. He came up with the concept of PayPal. He's one of the co-founders of Facebook. He's worth a lot of money. He's an immortalist. He doesn't want to die. And he's putting his money in an area that's of greatest interest to himself, which is what we need more and more individuals to do. Mark Zuckerberg, very generous humanitarian. He has pledged 99% of everything he has to finding a cure for almost every disease that afflicts humanity. We would like to put a pedestal up to Mark Zuckerberg, to Peter Thiel, to Jeff Bezos, to all these people who are putting their money into research aimed at accelerating the idea of growing biologically younger as we mature, as opposed to degenerating. Now, this is unprecedented. Wealthy people in the past didn't do this. They might donate money to a hospital, they might donate money to try to cure a particular disease, but if we don't eradicate aging, we could very well cure cancer. That only enables people to live a couple more years on average, because then they die of a stroke, of a heart attack, of some other immune senescent disease. So the fact that these wealthy people, the founders of Google, are putting big money into age reversal research, it kind of indicates we're on the right track right now. We're on the right track because we're seeing some of the most successful people in the United States putting big money into age reversal, and the media is picking up on it. Front cover of Forbes magazine in April 2016, Osmond Kaibar putting big money into research aimed at making people younger. We have an individual named Craig Ventar. He's been involved in the Human Genome Project. He believes that he's going to enable people to grow younger through genetic engineering. And it's going to happen. Again, the media is recognizing the fact that people are going to start living a lot longer very soon, that aging is going to become a relic of the past. Now, this is the front page of the New Scientist. This was July 2016. It reported on our time ship project. That's a presentation we made at this church several years ago. This is right outside of San Antonio, Texas, over 1,000 acres of property. We plan to build the world's largest cryopreservation and reanimation research facility. We've got all kinds of infrastructure in place. We're looking for some of the wealthy cryonicists to donate the money to build what will be a $350 million structure that will house cryopreservation patients and do the research to get him back to life. That this was a very favorable article in the New Scientist, a very prestigious science magazine, and the time ship recently has gotten other favorable publicity, so we're getting recognized, and people aren't laughing anymore. Discover magazine, talking about genetic engineering and how that may enable people to live a heck of a lot longer. And what's impressed us is Dr. George Church's research at Harvard. He believes within the next 5 years, his gene editing technology using the CRISPR-Cas9 techniques that he's developed will enable old people to become young again. George Church is an immortalist. He doesn't want to die. His efforts are being put into enabling human beings to live for an indefinite period of time. He intends to be the first guinea pig, by the way. When he feels this technology has evolved far enough, he wants to reverse his own aging process as the first individual to try it. George Church and I are the same age, so we both have the same motivation, i.e. we don't have a lot of time left. I'm 62 years of age, by the way. I need to accelerate this research, or I may miss that longevity boat, just like Ed Morse did, and so many others who really did nothing, unfortunately, that I know of, to make this a reality. Even after George Church publicized his work, just recently, the journal Nature reported on others using this CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing technology and seeing the results in the animal model. That indicates George Church is on the right track. And by the way, some organizations I've been involved with helped fund George Church in the early years. He's now gotten over $100 million of funding from outside people, which is fantastic. That means the research is going to accelerate even quicker than what it would otherwise if he had to rely on Harvard. So again, the media is reporting on the fact that people are going to start living a heck of a lot longer and maybe even forever. That's what we're seeing, headline news around the world showing this. The topic of tonight's talk are the human age reversal projects that we want to spearhead from South Florida, even though the research itself may be done somewhere else. We want to spearhead them from South Florida. These are the technologies that are ready to go right now, meaning we don't have to discover a new drug, we don't have to do anything different other than study these in older people to see if they will reverse aging. What I'm going to do now is play a video of something that aired around October 6th. That was when the hurricane was offshore. We were somewhat preoccupied, so we may have missed this, but it just shows what one drug that's available in every pharmacy you drive by tonight, sitting on that shelf, might be able to do to you. And there's a lot of research being done on this drug called rapamycin. It's a drug used to help prevent the rejection that occurs in organ transplant patients, but a low dose of rapamycin might enable your cells to clear the cellular debris that accumulates inside our aging cells, causing them to clog up and not function very well. Rapamycin may induce autophagy in a way that our older cells start functioning in a much younger way.
You sit? Good boy.
He should be at the end of his life.
He doesn't look it.
Yes.
Before you started taking rapamycin, how long would he run around for?
After about 10 minutes of running and playing, he would get really tired, stop, and then his arthritis would kick in. And then he wouldn't walk for the next 2 or 3 days.
And now how long will he run around for?
An hour or two.
This drug is very likely to have the same effects on lifespan and health span in dogs and probably in people as we've seen in laboratory animals.
So is this the miracle drug for dogs?
I don't know if it's the miracle drug for dogs. It's the miracle drug for my dog. It's what is keeping him alive, I believe.
Now, the good news about rapamycin is a number of scientists are self-experimenting with it. So this is not a study that we have to worry about funding right now. These scientists are getting together and measuring their biomarkers, and they're identifying maybe what the proper dose would be. You need to combine, by the way, rapamycin with the drug metformin, which we've talked about extensively at this church, because rapamycin can induce some insulin resistance, which would be overcome by the anti-diabetic drug metformin. So you've got credentialed scientists right now who are taking rapamycin and metformin and attempting to measure what effects it is having on their own aging process. And this is an example of how easy it may be to reverse biological aging using existing compounds. So what we're going to talk about as far as the first age reversal technology are senolytics. Seno relating to senescence, lytics relating to destruction. We want to destroy dysfunctional cells in our body, and that's what senolytic compounds do. They destroy senescent cells. And the reason for that is, as we grow older, our cells, not all of them, but just some of them, they accumulate. And these dysfunctional senile cells impede healthy organ function. They create chronic inflammation throughout our entire body. In other words, if we have senescent cells in just part of our body, they emit signals that creates a low-level systemic inflammatory reaction that creates problems across the board for us. They can increase cancer risk, and they shorten healthy lifespan. There's absolutely no value in holding on to these dysfunctional senile cells. So a study done in 2015, and there were a number of studies, by the way, but this is the one that was most prominent. This was done in the animal model, and they gave just low doses of a drug called dasatinib. This is a leukemia drug in which people with chronic myeloid leukemia take it every day. And the side effects aren't real bad, but just a small dose of dasatinib administered over a short period induced the results you're looking at your screen. Alleviating the symptoms of frailty, improving cardiac and vascular function, reducing osteoporosis, increasing exercise endurance, extending healthy lifespan, maybe even enabling people to lose some belly fat. It eliminates the fat cell progenitors, which would be a very effective way of inducing weight loss. I don't know of anyone who would not want these kind of benefits, and these kind of benefits may be available with an existing drug. And the good news is there's some research going on right now with humans that may enable us to identify the precise dose of dasatinib to enable us to purge our bodies of these senescent cells that are accelerating our aging process. These are quotes, by the way, from the scientists who did the mouse study, and they looked at all the other evidence on dasatinib, and they said, you know what, it's time to do a human study. And the good news, and I just learned this a couple days ago, is a group of scientists out in California, they are planning I think it's going to be a 24-patient study where they'll use different doses of dasatinib, carefully measure the benefits, and see if this existing drug, doesn't have to be discovered, it's already out there, used in a very low dose, cannot remove sufficient numbers of senescent cells to produce the results that we've seen in the animal model. And this is how easy it would be to do. The drug itself, we may only need 3 total tablets of it. That's it. Combine it with high-dose quercetin, a nutrient you can get anywhere. Just 1 tablet of dasatinib a week for a 3-week period of time. And based on what the results we've seen in the animal model, that may be all we need to remove those senile cells from throughout our body and regain healthy organ function, reduce the inflammation, and all the other aspects of aging that are going to eventually kill us if we don't do it. And this is just one of several age reversal technologies. Immune senescence is a problem that occurs in people really over the age of 30. Their immune system starts to decline, but after 65, it literally falls off a cliff. Now, one reason for that is our thymus gland shrinks as we grow older. In fact, as we grow past puberty, our thymus gland loses its volume and functionality, and the result, unfortunately, is the manifestation of a lot of problems that would be eradicated if we had healthy thymus tissue. Now, what you're looking at there is what happens when your at the age of 20, you've got some good thymic activity, and by the age of 40, it diminishes greatly. And by the time you hit 80, there may be none of it left. So it's rather critical, if we're going to live a long and healthy life, to reverse the atrophy of the thymus gland. In other words, to regrow new thymic tissue. So some scientists have looked at what goes on with immune dysfunction. And this chart, I want to go over it with you just a little bit. This one here? Okay. Okay, I hope you had a good chance to look at this chart. It's showing naive T cell counts plummeting. And this is what happens over the age of 65. And you also see a red line going up. Those are memory cells. Now, nothing wrong with healthy memory cells, but as these memory cells accumulate, they become senescent. We want to purge our bone marrow of these senescent memory cells. Now, that's what the dasatinib drug may do for us, which is great news, but it's not going to produce naive T cells. What we need to do that is regenerate the thymus gland. That's the only way we're going to be able to do that. To give you an idea of the severity of what immune senescence represents, these two charts, one measures CD4-CD8 ratios, the other measures delayed type hypersensitivity. And if you're over the age of 80 and you have these two blood tests done, they can indicate rather strongly your probability of being alive within the next 2 years. If you have a low CD4-CD8 ratio, or your mean DTH score is going in the wrong direction, you have about an 80% chance of being dead. It means we need to reverse this, and that's where regenerating the thymus gland provides a very, very good way of making that happen. Now, this is an MRI image of a 55-year-old. To the left, you see virtually nothing in the area where the thymus gland should be. And the reason you don't see anything is, well, he's 55 years of age. It has atrophied. It has shriveled down to virtually nothing. An innovative treatment was administered to this individual and 9 other people. And that gold nugget you can see on the picture to the right is a rejuvenated thymus gland. Now, that is using existing technologies. No new drug was needed to be developed to make this happen. Just a creative use of existing FDA-approved drugs enabled the thymus gland to regenerate. And then that chart to the far right, that's showing the immune improvement in response to thymic regeneration in AIDS patients. The immune system is dramatically improving in response to thymic regeneration. And the great news is, in a 9 to 10 patient proof of concept study, thymic regeneration has been demonstrated. It's also been demonstrated, by the way, in the animal model and in HIV patients. So we've got data in collaboration with researchers at Stanford that thymic regeneration is possible, and we need to do a 30-patient study to prove this has really worked. A proof of concept study is what we did for a small amount of money, and we were able to demonstrate thymic regeneration. We now need to do this in a more controlled manner, and the cost of doing this is going to be very low. About $1.5 million is all they need to do this study to validate whether this creative use of existing FDA-approved therapies is going to rejuvenate the thymus gland. And you look at how many people need it. If you're over age 40, you would want to do this. The same way at age 40, well, you might get a colonoscopy. You may have a PSA blood test. You might start getting flu shots. Well, thymic regeneration may become medical mainstream once we demonstrate this in a 30-patient study. So this single therapy alone could add decades to our healthy human lifespan, which is why we're so excited about accelerating age reversal research. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we have people who don't want us to proceed. They think that this is immoral, that it will never work. And this was the battle we waged in New Zealand. They said it's not possible to interfere with aging processes. We had bureaucrats in the charity commissioner's office telling the scientists that they couldn't do this. Well, we already knew it was working. We were doing it, and they were telling us it was impossible. But you look at every other medical advance, and it was always met with opposition. Opposition, unfortunately, that delayed the implementation of the technology into clinical medical practice. That meant people died while an existing therapy already existed to save their lives. We need to accelerate human age reversal and get it into the clinical setting. So when you turn age 40, 50, 60, 70, your doctor has a protocol. At age 40, he's going to tell you it's time to start rejuvenating your thymus gland. And maybe around the age of 50 or 60, it's time to purge your body of those senescent cells. So there'll be different protocols depending on what your age is, and all those protocols will do is keep you alive. That's what they will do. And we're so afraid of delays because penicillin was published by Dr. Alexander Fleming in 1929, and then it was kind of forgotten until World War II, when the government literally forced drug companies to figure out a way to make mass production batches of it. And after 1945, with those bacterial infections that were killing everyone around 1900, it was actually 1900 to 1945, the bacterial infections pretty much disappeared. Penicillin cured most of the bacterial infections that were sickening and killing people, and then other antibiotics were developed shortly thereafter to eradicate most of the other bacterial infections. So we had people who were needlessly dying for a long time because penicillin research was not accelerated. So look at the delay of 17 years, and you realize millions of people needlessly died. Hundreds of millions, of course, needlessly suffered. I mean, a bacterial infection could mean weeks of struggling to live, and you barely pull through, and you're grateful you're alive, but those several weeks were really nasty. We're in the same predicament right now. We know we can reverse certain mechanisms of aging. We know that for fact, and yet there is not enough resources being devoted to bringing those into the clinical setting right now. Because every day in this country, over 5,000 people die from degenerative illnesses. Over 5,000 dead people in this country alone because we're not able to control aging adequately. We need to fund the research. And we are reaching out to wealthy people who really, if they write a check for $100,000 or $250,000, I realize that's not possible for most people in this congregation, but there are literally thousands, if not tens of thousands of them out there who could fund the research needed to save their lives and the rest of humanity. This is unprecedented, by the way. Now, the most exciting area of research that we are pursuing right now is young plasma transfer. Taking plasma from healthy young people, concentrating it in a way that we can put it into older individuals in an infusion and hopefully reverse virtually every aspect of aging in their body. In the animal model, it works. There's no reason to believe why it won't work in humans. So we're going to play another video right now to show you how easy it may be to reverse aging right now if we can initiate these research studies soon enough.
Right now, a lot of Bay Area geniuses are focused on solving one of the greatest mysteries of life: aging. One company is hot on the trail of an answer. Only on 5 tonight, Juliette Goodrich reports scientists may have found a real fountain of youth, one that can repair aging brains in plasma from young blood.
At Blood Centers of the Pacific, 22-year-old Matthew Ryan is donating plasma, a critical component of blood.
I've always liked to help people.
The pale yellow fluid can help save the lives of patients suffering from burns, shock, or trauma. For one thing, plasma
contains all of the antibodies that you have to fight infections.
But now scientists believe this fluid may contain something far more spectacular.
Think fountain of youth, but with a twist. What's flowing through the veins of young people may help restore old aging brains.
Neuroscientist Carolee Nikolic.
The very first reaction, I think in all of us, was skepticism.
Nikolic heads up Alkahest, a biotech company in San Carlos. He says plasma contains thousands of proteins that do different jobs. But when his colleagues analyzed plasma samples donated by the young and old alike, they were astonished.
We have actually now for the first time discovered that there are hundreds of proteins that change with aging.
Young plasma is awash in special proteins that rejuvenate tissues. But as we age, they're replaced by damaging inflammatory ones. So the scientists did a simple experiment with some very old mice. We've sped up the video for time. In a special maze that measures learning and memory, old mice have a tough time remembering how to get out. They're stuck exploring dead ends and making lots of navigational errors. But when injected with young human plasma, these old mice head directly to the exit without making a mistake. Not only that, their brains have changed.
It's pretty dramatic.
Those green dots? Newborn neurons, freshly sprouted in a part of the brain critical for memory and learning.
We do our treatment, we see a doubling of that.
At Stanford University, Alkahest has now launched the first controlled clinical study of young plasma in humans. It involves 18 people with mild or moderate Alzheimer's disease.
The final results will come at the end of the year.
If the trial proves safe, then a second study with more patients and a bigger dose. If the treatment eventually proves successful, the hope, by growing healthy new neurons, the brain may clear itself.
We are reducing this inflammatory process in the brain.
As for Matthew, he knows people with Alzheimer's and wants to help.
I think it'll be pretty incredible to say that my plasma could, or anyone else's plasma for that matter, can help them to make somewhat of a recovery.
In San Carlos, Juliette Goodrich, KPIX5.
The number of people living with Alzheimer's disease is growing fast. If this treatment works, scientists plan on identifying and then manufacturing the critical proteins that offer the greatest benefit.
Can you imagine in 5 years, there's a big press conference called where the credentialed people, because those are the ones that get the media attention, they announce that biological aging is no longer going to be the killer it once was, that they can take pretty much anybody and bring them back to a youthful state, rejuvenate failing organs, cure virtually every disease they have. Let's say that's 5 years from now. And then you think back of how many people you cared for who died. And you realize the technologies weren't discovered 5 days before that announcement or even a year before. Those technologies, they were known years, if not decades, before they became clinically available. That, to me, is a crime against humanity. And the idea of using young plasma has been demonstrated time and time again in the animal model. There are dozens of studies showing that when young blood is circulated into older animals, those older animals systemically grow biologically younger. It rejuvenates virtually every organ system. Those animals not only grow younger, they live longer, they are healthier, they like that young blood. And it's documented now in animal studies. We've got preliminary evidence that it's working in humans. Preliminary evidence. And every day, 5,000 or more people in this country are dying from diseases that this type of research, if moved in the clinical setting, could save their lives, which is why we're so anxious to make this happen. And we're not alone. People at Harvard, Cambridge, Stanford, some of the most credentialed universities around the world are actively engaged in this type of young plasma transfer technology. They're doing the research. The question is, are they going to bring it out of the laboratory into your doctor's office soon enough? Because every day they delay, 5,000 dead Americans for every day they delay making it available. Now, Johnson & Johnson, they funded a $50 million study, also at Stanford. A lot of good work being done, by the way, in California. But at Stanford, $50 million study, they want to see if young plasma can be an effective therapy against Alzheimer's disease. Based on that video you saw, based on everything that we've reviewed, our prediction is it's probably going to work. Don't know how well, but it's probably going to help reverse the dementia suffered by Alzheimer's patients. And this is a study that really just fascinated us, came out November 2016. These are all recent studies, by the way, where they took just a little bit of human blood, and put it into older animals. And these were the benefits that they were able to observe. At the bottom, by the way, is a headline as to how the media sometimes treats this inappropriately. But can you imagine if a technology could improve our cognition and decrease the chronic inflammation that's really killing all of us as we grow older, and when we start to behave young? I don't know what's creepy about that at all, but again, this is what the media sometimes says. What's most significant about this study, though, is those young mice, just like the older dog in the previous video, they were behaving younger. And that's really fantastic, because old people, as you know, they don't behave in a younger state. They wish they could, but they're unable to. But you treat just old mice with a little bit of human young blood, those young mice grow younger. So we feel we're on the right trail. We know that young blood rejuvenates old animals. We know that for a fact. We also know we want to remove constituents from old blood, those senescent constituents that create inflammation. We want to remove that from old blood, and that technology exists. It's called apheresis. You can remove old senile plasma and replace it with young plasma, and what we want to do is mobilize young people's bone marrow so that they spew out huge numbers of stem cells. And this again is using an existing drug called granulocyte colony stimulating factor. It will mobilize the bone marrow to produce huge numbers of immune cells and stem cells in young people. We can remove those through an apheresis procedure that, by the way, is done all the time. It's a clinically validated way of treating certain disorders, and we will then separate the plasma from those young people's blood and put the plasma only into the older people, with the objective of giving them all of those proteins the researchers are talking about that will enable the stem cells in older people, we believe, to turn back on, and also suppress the inflammation and enable older people to start behaving like younger people again. Now, an analogy I like to use, because we don't know of like the 700 proteins that people speculate are involved in rejuvenation, we don't know exactly which ones are going to make old people young again. But we don't really care, because we can grab this young plasma from younger people and we can concentrate it and put it into elderly individuals, and if they start growing biologically younger, we don't have to worry about which proteins are doing it. It's just a fact of growing biologically younger. We can continue doing that until we do isolate them and synthesize them in a way where it becomes very, very cost effective. Smallpox was cured before they knew viruses existed. Cured meaning they were able to vaccinate and prevent people from getting it before they even knew about viruses. So we know a lot more about aging right now than what our ancestors did about smallpox. And yet our ancestors were able to eradicate smallpox wherever universal vaccination was implemented. At some point, there will be universal infusions of pro-youth factors into elderly humans. It will enable them to grow biologically younger. And it'll probably be isolated at first to countries like the United States. People in this country will be growing younger, and it'll take a while for it to make it around the world, just the way it is. In fact, smallpox killed 300 million people from 1900 to 1979, because it took that long to get it available around the world. But the good news is, for people in the United States, we think we can make these technologies available very, very quickly. So it took a long time to eradicate smallpox, as I mentioned. We can't wait that long to eradicate aging, or we'll be one of those victims that people will talk about in the future, whereas the technology existed to keep us all alive in this room, but no one made it clinically available. That really is a crime. So again, we know that young blood circulated into older animals has a systemic rejuvenating effect. There are 2 clinical studies that we hope to initiate very quickly to validate this working in older people. We mentioned proteins, anti-aging proteins. Now, one of them is called GDF11, and scientists at Harvard are using this to rejuvenate old animals right now. And the findings are so exciting that a group of engineers decided that they're going to start using GDF11. I just talked to one of them yesterday, as a matter of fact. He is very anxious to make this more widely available. But by injecting this single protein that's available in young blood, they're seeing an age reversal benefit. But this is the rationale for someone deciding to do something unprecedented on their own. It's called self-experimentation, and it's being done, by the way, more and more. Self-experimentation. But this is the rationale for it. GDF has incredible benefits. Incredible benefits, including enhancing DNA repair, restoring stem cell functionality. And this is very inexpensive, by the way. The GDF11 itself costs very little. And about 40 people right now are injecting GDF11 every day, and they're reporting some interesting benefits. Mechanisms of action are incredible. The idea of reactivating our progenitor cells, our stem cells, repairing DNA damage, this is all done with GDF11, just one of the 700 proteins that exist in young blood. Now that chart to the right, it shows a tremendous amount of DNA damage that occurs with aging. That means everyone in this room, unfortunately, is suffering from lack of efficient DNA repair. If the GDF11 is put back into our body based on this animal study, we're repairing DNA at an older age just as effectively as younger people with one protein. And there's 700 other proteins that very well may have other rejuvenating benefits. So the anecdotal feedback from these people who are shooting up the GDF11 every day, no one gets off it, by the way. From what I've been told, once people start on this, they're feeling younger, they're looking younger, they're behaving younger, they don't want to stop. In fact, if they stop, well, the aging process just starts to occur again. But these were the benefits that they are observing as far as the anecdotal feedback. And it's good to hear that. That means it might be working, but there's always that risk of a placebo effect. Maybe they just think by sticking that needle in their arm every day, it's making them younger. Though that improved sense of smell and greater appetite, sleeping better, if that can, and that's been going on now for almost 2 years, hard to believe that that's a placebo effect. But what they did is they started to look at some clinical measures. One was skin elasticity, and they used a clinically validated measure of skin elasticity, and there was improvements, 21%, 29%, 30% improvements in skin elasticity over a 4 to 14 month period in people self-administering GDF11. And they looked at cognitive function, and there were marked improvements in their neurological capabilities. This is a validated test of cognitive function, significant improvements. But the best, I say, for last year, arterial stiffness. As we grow older, unfortunately, we become very inflexible, very rigid. Glycation is a big factor, calcification. Our tissues, they harden. Atherosclerosis, arteriosclerosis, you know that is hardening of the arteries. But our cells, our brain, everything in our body becomes stiff. Well, with the GDF11, within 4 to 14 months, a 37% improvement. Now, if that's all GDF11 did, was improve arterial stiffness by 37%, this would be a breakthrough drug, probably bigger than any drug sold in this country right now, because everyone suffers from arterial stiffness. It's a big cause of hypertension. And as most people in this room know from previous talks I've given, the older we get, the higher our blood pressure. And one big reason for that is our arterial system does not expand and contract with youthful elasticity the way it used to. Unfortunately, that our arterial system becomes stiff and rigid, and we become hypertensive, and we become very prone to strokes and heart failure and kidney failure. Theoretically, this improvement in arterial stiffness would relieve us of those types of age-related problems. So again, the urgent need to fund age reversal research. I work on it every single day. The fact of the matter is, wealthy people who are growing old are becoming aware of it. And what's interesting is the young Silicon Valley people who are seeing this as clearly as I am, and probably most of you in this room. They're putting money into it, and that's good news. But there's a heck of a lot more money that needs to be put into it if we're going to benefit. And we as a society would benefit enormously. We're talking about sparing Medicare and probably pension funds and Social Security from insolvency. Because just imagine if we took an 80-year-old person and made them 45 again, and they're able to go back to work. well, they don't need the Medicare. They don't need the Social Security anymore. They can become functional again. We can spare a lot of the social programs. We can hopefully add decades of healthy human lifespan to ourselves and reach a point where aging and disease and death will be completely eradicated. This slide deals with the Pulse nightclub tragedy. And what's interesting is, over a period of 3 days, over $4 million was raised, primarily from strangers, to help strangers get over that horrible tragedy. And yet, we're trying to raise, in some cases, just a little bit more money than this to do an age reversal study. And it's been challenging. I don't know what holds people back, where they'll donate a lot of money to strangers but not put money into projects that could enable them and everyone they care for and the rest of humanity to live a lot longer. Now, the cover of Time magazine around April 2016 talked about babies. We all know they're going to live a lot longer than what we are. In fact, that age of 142, that's really an underestimate. Babies born today are going to live a heck of a lot longer, I think, than 142. But that doesn't pertain to anyone I can see in this room, because none of us are babies anymore. We're somewhat older than that. We need to accelerate this technology so we can reverse that process. And if I don't raise the money we need to do this research, I'm going to buy a casket. I am a licensed funeral director, by the way. I can get them at wholesale, so it won't cost me too much. And I'm going to have that casket sitting on the stage wherever I talk. It's going to be everywhere I go, because I'm going to be talking to some very high net worth people, groups this size, people in the billionaire, multi-billionaire category. And if they don't want to put money into the age reversal research, I want to invite them to come up and inspect how comfortable the mattress is and how secure they'll be in this box in perpetuity. In perpetuity. And for people who know me, they will understand when I say I'll do something like that, it will probably happen if we fail to raise the funding. Because this is the choice we can make right now. And in the past, frankly, this would have been cruel because there was nothing we could do about it. There was nothing we could do to study aging in a way that we could reverse it in a meaningful way. But that all changed around year 2014. There now are enough technologies to reverse aging in a way that could potentially save the lives of everybody in this church right now. So these are the 5 projects that we are most interested in. Now, the good news is there are other projects equally as exciting that other people are pursuing. And if those projects yield the results that we expect they might, and I was privy to some information about a study that was done using a compound there were 11 people in the study. They infused them for 14 days. Now, all 11 people claim that they are younger. That's the anecdotal feedback we're getting. But we did blood draws, constant blood draws during that entire 14-day period and afterwards. Those were sent to a specialty laboratory. We're going to know within the next 30 days if we were really able to reverse aging using something different than what I've discussed today, but that is readily available, it's very inexpensive, and it could theoretically add many healthy decades to our lifespan. So those are other people doing tremendous work, and we applaud them for it. But that doesn't mean we have to sit back and wait, because that's what the problem is. Too many people are sitting back and waiting for everyone else to do it, and that's a really risky situation. I want to put this slide on because people do ask me, well, what about these diseases that people get when they grow older? Well, those diseases are primarily related to aging. Now, I like this chart because it shows a very prevalent disorder that women and men, to some extent, suffer from, breast cancer. But look at what happens. At age 25, you're really in great health. I mean, your risk of breast cancer is very low. Your risk of any disease is almost non-existent at 25. But look what happens when you turn 30. That's an exponential increase in breast cancer risk. And every single 5-year period, there's an exponential greater risk of a woman contracting breast cancer. If we reverse aging, especially through the gene editing technology that Dr. Church at Harvard is working on, if we repair our DNA and we realign our gene expression in such a way that we are a 25-year-old, our cancer risk gets reduced to a virtually negligible area. And if you do develop cancer with that gene editing technology, they'll probably be able to cure it. But anyway, it's an interesting set of statistics that a very progressive oncologist, Dr. Simone, put together, and it just shows you the devastating impact that aging inflicts. But the encouraging news about this is if we reverse aging, we also reverse our risk of all these horrific diseases. So human age reversal research. It should be the priority. It's my priority, and it's one of the reasons why this church was set up, to encourage people to become active, to talk about it, to tell their friends, you know what, I attended a lecture Thursday night, and I heard this individual talking about something that I didn't know existed, and that is the probability of reversing human aging in our lifetime. Not science fiction. This is absolute scientific fact because it's occurring in proof of concept human studies. It's already occurred in many, many animal studies. There's no reason to expect, not to expect, this to have at least some meaningful impact, if not a very, very significant one. So I want to thank you all for attending tonight and listen to me put on this presentation. I put it on in various forms to a number of groups, and the enthusiasm is quite high. And what we need to do, though, again, is accelerate it, because I really feel that every day I wake up, 5,000 people died the day before because this research was not accelerated enough. It was not brought into the clinical setting soon enough for people's lives to be saved.
Amy, put this mic on. We have a few minutes for some questions. If there are any questions for Mr. Faloon. Over here. Here, let me bring the microphone because we are live streaming this, and there are people that would like to hear what you have to ask. And of course, we're recording this as well.
Great. Thank you. Let me be brief. I came a little bit late. The latest research just blew me away. They were able to take the stem cells for an older human. They turned, let's say, one of them into a sperm cell, the other one into like an ovum cell, whatever. They put them together, and there you have the embryonic stem cell. That just blew me away.
Every single day in my email box, somebody sends me a news article or a published scientific paper showing an advance being made as it relates to aging. Every single day. The technology is occurring right now. But again, if you were back in 1938 and your child developed a bacterial infection and you watch your child slowly die, you would have no idea about the penicillin. And the majority of the population has no idea all of this research is happening. And my fear is it gets into the hands of a big pharmaceutical company and they take 5 to 10 years to move it forward into the approval process through the FDA. That is a barrier that we have to overcome. And I have a track record of pushing through bureaucratic barriers and making technologies available very fast. So once we further validate that we can regenerate the thymus gland, that we can enable young plasma to restore youth to older people, we're going to make that available one way or another.
Other questions? Yes, Catherine.
Thank you. Question for you. Aren't you afraid that by using senolytic drugs, you would increase the occurrence of cancer cells in the body?
Not at all. See, these senescent cells, unfortunately, increase your risk of cancer. That's one of the problems. They can transform into a malignancy if they linger around too long. By removing the senescent cells, you're going to remove pre-malignant cells also. So we do not have a fear of causing cancer by taking away cells that are dysfunctional and don't belong in our body anymore.
Question from Jeffrey.
Yeah, actually, it's not a question, it's a suggestion. On the plasma of young people, I suggest using the plasma of young people whose ancestors have lived a longer time than somebody, let's say, whose ancestors only lived into their 20s or 30s.
Well, it's a good suggestion, but we're going to be limited from the standpoint of finding young donors who will have to pay and having them willing to go through these apheresis procedures. They're painful. They involve 5 or 6 hours of being strapped onto a hospital bed while their blood is run through an apheresis machine. So we need to, we want to certainly blood type match. We want a sex match. But as far as finding people who have 100-year-old ancestors, that's a tall order right now. We think we can induce the age reversal without doing that, but you're correct. If we got people who had better genes, that might work better. But we're looking at the proteins, remember, in young plasma. So those proteins may be similar. In fact, GDF11 is the same in every vertebrate species. So it doesn't really matter who you get the GDF11 from, it has the same way of working. Of course, no question, we'd like to do that. But again, we have to be practical. We need to get this technology out fast. So maybe some of the billionaires can find some of those young people. But for the rest of us, we'll be happy to get a healthy 18-year-old who's willing to inject the drug, the granulocyte colony stimulating factor, for 5 days, which is going to mobilize their bone marrow, produce lots and lots of stem cells, and then remove their blood, then separate the cells from the plasma and put those stem cell mobilized plasma constituents into that older person. That can be done to treat far more people. No, good suggestion, it's just a matter of practicality.
Bill, I have a question from Matan, who's 16 years old.
Rather than give the body supplements, do you know of any research that can make the body repair itself of old age?
Well, that's what the younger proteins would theoretically do. Supplements protect against some of the damage inflicted via the aging process and reduce certain disease risks. But as far as dealing with repair, the proteins self-repair. If we can manipulate the genes through the CRISPR-Cas9 technology that Dr. Church is operating with, well, then we can do it very easily. We can theoretically rejuvenate an older person's gene expression profile back to that of a younger person and do it very efficiently. Because the way some of these technologies are working, in the beginning, they're going to be costly. But as with any technology, that cost will come down real quick.
Question from Richard.
Sure. If human plasma is able to help mice and rats, can we utilize the plasma from other animals?
I don't know the answer to that question, but we wouldn't want to try that knowing how effectively young plasma can work. There's a cancer study that we funded starting back in 2010 where we took end-stage cancer patients and used stem cell mobilized plasma, and we were able to see enough efficacy with that research to make us want to stay with the humans right now.
There's a question or comment from Greg.
I want to know, Bill, how can all of us help to make these things better?
Well, at this stage, as I mentioned, we're looking at high net worth individuals who can put money into a pool that will be used to fund the 5 studies that I talked about and other studies, and then get them out the door very, very quickly. The typical person is challenged just to meet their monthly expenses, and I understand that. But there's at least 10,000 people who I have access to who could write a check for $250,000 and never miss the money. Those are the people who I feel have an obligation to society and to themselves to put this research at the forefront of where they contribute money or invest money, because it could save them, save their family members, and then it spreads out to the rest of society. So help will come from those who have the resources to do it, and that's probably the upper 0.2% of the population of this country. But we know a lot of them, and some of them are doing great work. I mean, I talk about Peter Thiel and Jeff Bezos and many others. They're putting money into it. But these people are young already. I do not believe they have the sense of urgency that I have or many members of this congregation have to move this into the clinical arena like within the next month or two, as opposed to letting it go through a 5 or 10 year approval process. So it's great that wealthy people are supporting research. Fantastic that they're doing it. My fear is they're not going to prioritize making it available.
We have one more question from Arlene. Arlene?
When you take the plasma out of a young person, can it go to anybody, or does it have to match?
I'm not sure what we have to do with that, because what we're looking to do is, first of all, we take a healthy 21-year-old or even 18. We give them the granulocyte colony stimulating drug for about 5 days. That mobilizes their bone marrow to emit tremendous numbers of pro-youth factors. We put them through the apheresis, we remove all of that from the younger person, and then we separate the cells from the plasma. So we may be able to just use plasma without the matching and still get the benefit of those 700 proteins that are in that young plasma that may induce the rejuvenating effect. There may be no risk with a blood typing. But we don't know the total answers to all this, but we're going to start off using blood type matching and sex type matching to at least get as much compatibility as we can.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bill Faloon. Just a moment ago, we had a question from gentleman Gregory Strom. Greg, would you stand, please? Greg is one of the first people in the unlimited lifespans movement. Back in the 60s, he was involved with cryonics and unlimited lifespans. We appreciate you being here tonight, Greg. Okay. So I'd like to tell you about our next events. We have once a month events here at Perpetual Life. Next month we will have Jose Carrera on February the 23rd. That's the fourth Thursday in February. And then on the fourth Thursday in March we have Charlie Cam coming down from Chicago. Be sure to come to listen to both of them if you can. Now, if you haven't yet already done so, please give us your email so that we can tell you about these future events. And we have online now about a dozen people all over the world, all over the country watching. I know there's somebody from the Netherlands. We've got a group in Chicago, a group in the San Francisco area. There are satellite groups getting together. I was texted. Someone told me they're meeting with 12 people right now. So someplace else, there's a place where I believe they're having a potluck, and 12 people are watching this live stream right now. And we're going to encourage doing more of that around the world. Bill?
I just want to make one comment about Jose, who's going to be here in February, that if there's people you know who maybe are on the fence as to whether or not they feel this is something of interest to them, if they hear Jose talking here for an hour or two, they will be converted. He is the most enthusiastic immortalist I have ever met. I met him at RadFest, by the way, and his energy, he goes around the world hosting seminars, he promotes physical immortality, he promotes anti-aging research. He is probably the most significant person out there right now who is pushing all of this technology forward. I don't know the individual, by the way, in March. I just don't know him. But meeting Jose was really such an uplifting experience that if you can make sure to circle that date in February, come here, bring any friends you have. He is one of the most, again, inspirational individuals I've ever met.
Thank you. That's going to be February 23rd and March 23rd. So Jose's coming February 23rd, the fourth Thursday in February. You know, the other thing that Bill just mentioned was the RadFest. The RadFest is happening again this August in San Diego. You want to go to that. RadFest, RAD stands for RAAD, Revolution Against Aging and Death. So please Google, go to radfest.com. Right now they have a special for the cost of the festival, of the conference. It's more than a conference, though. It's really a wonderful thing. You want to go to that. And I believe they have an opportunity where you can pay over the course of the next few months. So check it out, RadFest. And Bill, you'll be speaking there again, I'm sure. It's a fantastic event. We were there last August, and it's life-changing. If you've never thought of this or heard of this before, check it out. So I want to thank you for coming this evening. It's great to see you all. Many of you have come from all over, Rich and Beth all the way from Naples, but somebody who just drove in from Ocala. They were in Ocala a couple of days ago. So glad to have you all here this evening. And all of you who are online, having your events at your places, wonderful to have you. We look forward to seeing you again. Now, this gives you the chance now to meet with Bill downstairs. You can gather with us and have a conversation. And we also have some food down there. We've got some of the best quality foods that our chef Jackie has prepared, chicken or salmon dinner for you downstairs, as well as refreshments. So look forward to getting to know you better downstairs to talk with you. Thank you for coming to Perpetual Life tonight.
It's called Forever Young. May the good Lord be with you down every road you roam. And may sunshine and happiness surround you when you're far from home. And may you grow to be proud, dignified and true. And do unto others as you'd have done to you. Be courageous and be brave, and in my heart you'll always stay. Forever young, forever young, forever young, forever young. May good fortune be with you, may your guiding light be strong. Build a stairway to heaven with a